next session is, are we building bridges between the two, or are we building walls? So this is something that we're going to have three experts in their field come and talk about. So everything from herbal remedies to alternative therapies, our panelists will be sharing insights on how we can create more inclusive healthcare system that honors the wisdom of both of these worlds. So I would like to invite Udit Sansangi, Dr. Nathan Bryan, and Dr. Kibet Shikoku. Please put your hands together for our panelists.
Welcome all of us to this conversation this afternoon. I'll be the moderator for this conversation, and I think all of us are called upon to make your contributions because it's a relatively interesting discussion. And with me are very able gentlemen coming from different parts of the world to share their experiences. And I'm happy that we are discussing a topic that, in my view, has always been perceived to be a common practice in our setup. And I didn't know that the rest of the world was struggling with it. So I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves very briefly, tell us who they are and what they do, and then we can pick up this conversation. Let me start with Dr. Nathan from my left.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Nathan Bryan. I spent 20 years in academia as a professor of molecular medicine. We made a lot of discoveries in the nitric oxide field. And then I turned from academician into serial entrepreneur. Today I'm the founder, chairman, and CEO of Bryan Therapeutics. And we're a clinical stage biotechnology company that's involved in novel drug discovery, specifically focused on nitric oxide. Nitric oxide's it's a gaseous signaling molecule. It's a vasodilator, regulates blood flow, mobilizes stem cells. And so our claim to fame is we've made a solid dose form of nitric oxide gas that we're developing as novel therapeutics. We've got drug programs in ischemic heart disease, really overcoming the tolerance of organic nitrates, the cornerstone therapy. We've got a drug for Alzheimer's, which really gets to the root cause of Alzheimer's, which is low blood flow, cerebral apathy or atrophy, inflammation, oxidative stress, and immune dysfunction, and insulin resistance. And fortunately, nitric oxide corrects all of those. And then we make a topical product for non-healing wounds, diabetic ulcers. Nitric oxide's antibacterial, kills the infection in a non-healing wound, and then causes a hyperemic response to induce tissue granulation and wound closure. But a lot of my time in academia, we were uncovering the mechanism of action of many traditional Chinese medicines and some Ayurvedic. But the reason that has never penetrated the U.S. market is because the one drug, one target model doesn't work for traditional medicines. It's the synergy of the different extracts and components in there that provide the therapeutic benefit. But we know these are time tested. They've stood the test of time. They're not only safe, but they're very effective. So if we could figure out what the mechanism is, or one of many mechanisms, then we could gain more insight and more properly dose and advise patients on not just dosing, but interactions with other medications. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Nathan. And I think that will be the gist. You know, dealing with medications or drugs that in our view are either unregulated, unrefined, nobody seems to know what the dosing should look like, and yet we still use them. So this will be a very good conversation to have this afternoon. And to my right is Mr. Udit. Possibly you can pick it up from there.
Thanks, Dr. Kibet. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Udit, and I'm a functional medicine health coach from Mumbai, India. I think I'm at a very enviable position with respect to this topic over here, because functional medicine is a branch of medicine which actually picks off where East and West converge. So the lens that we use in functional medicine is pretty much of the Eastern sciences of root cause medicine, which we can give examples of in Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, where we try to go below the symptoms and understand why the dysfunction is actually taking place. And we absolutely use the modalities of the West. We use drugs when required. We use high-end diagnostics. We use GI maps, which is a gastrointestinal map, and we use everything from CGMs, which are continuous glucose monitors, to really a high-end organic acid tests as well. So I do feel that I'm pretty much at the convergence of modern medicine with traditional medicine, and I am a strong believer that our paths must and should converge to provide maximum value to the people. I'll pick up from the last panel discussion where Dr. Musa kind of ended off with that we need to look to our left and to our right and see what the other person is doing and how we can contribute to what the other person is doing and bring them together to increase and improve patient outcomes, to make it a better place for all of us. So I think collaboration and convergence is the way forward, and I see a lot of modern medicine and traditional medicine in my country in top end hospitals coming together, and I'm looking forward to discussing this with the both of you.
Thank you, Mr. Udit. And I think the question is, where is the convergence? Is there room, first of all, to even consider traditional medicine? And I think for me, coming from Africa, it takes me back during my early days as a young doctor when I was requested by one of my professors to be seconded to a facility, a herbal clinic, that was actually, providing what we thought were herbs, only to realize that they were actually combining herbs with modern medicine. And so the question was, what out of these two, or which out of these two is actually providing cure? And that was a question that none of us could answer. But there was a difference between the kind of patients that we were seeing visiting this particular facility and those that were visiting our routine hospitals. We were seeing patients trickling from our routine hospitals to these herbal clinics. So the question is, where did we go wrong? Or where have we gone wrong? Is that something that we need to rethink? Where should the convergence be? And I think just coming back to Dr. Nathan, being a cardiologist, looking at various products, I don't know what your experience is and why do we fight traditional medicine? Is there any reason why we fight traditional medicine? Or why are we, a lot of time spend time criticizing traditional medicine? Is there something that we aren't doing right?
I think so. I think once you understand, and spending 20 years in academia and training future physicians, you realize that, at least in the US medical system, I think we do a good job of teaching the basic sciences, the physiology, the biochemistry, the pathology. But then it's never translated into patient care. And the epiphany for me was that medicine is a business. Medicine is not the altruism of what's best for the patient as it was 100 years ago. And remember, the number one rule of business is never lose a customer. And when you've got traditional natural medicines that you can get over the counter that aren't patentable, and it takes away from the market share and actually get patients off of prescription drugs, then it impedes upon the market of the big pharma and big business. So it's a threat. It's an imminent threat to big pharma and the business of medicine. And I think that's been the disconnect. We have to get back to root cause, which I think is a consensus theme here at this conference, because our body's never missing a synthetic compound that inhibits cholesterol synthesis, a statin. Our body's never missing a synthetic compound that inhibits stomach acid production, PPIs, but yet everybody's on these drugs. And for me, understanding the biochemistry and physiology of basic chronic disease, including heart disease, it boils down to two things. People get sick for two reasons and two reasons only. The body's missing something that it needs, or it's exposed to something that it doesn't need. So if you detoxify the body, replete missing minerals and nutrients, the body heals itself. And again, we're never missing a synthetic compound that inhibits a biochemical reaction. And if it comes from earth, comes from nature, if it's a natural medicine, then our body can respond to it because it's something that's naturally found in nature and not man-made in a lab.
Wow. So there's quite some serious amount of work to be done because you're competing with big boys and big girls.
Yeah, no, it's been. I mean, the Schopenhauer quote from 400 years ago that fundamental truths are defined by three stages, right? First, they're ridiculed. Secondly, they're violently opposed, and then third, they're accepted as being self-evident. So I've been ridiculed by my academic colleagues, been violently opposed by big pharma, but I think the tide's changing, especially in the U.S. with the election last month. American people are fed up with regulations, with big pharma continuously poisoning the American population with food, with drugs, and I think under this new administration, there's going to be a new way forward with safer medications, more kind of stress on big pharma and making sure that the drugs are number one safe, number one do no harm, but make sure that they're also efficacious.
Okay, so chances are we might also be trying to discuss regulatory issues, the role of various respective administrative structures and trying to see whether this contributes to either building bridges or, adding more walls to the use of traditional medicine. To you, Mr. Audit, you talked about trying to close the gap, create some level of convergence. You talked about drugs, traditional medicines that you get from China. I don't know, how much exposure you have to other traditional forms of medicines and what your practice has been while you're coaching, especially, the kind of outcomes that you see, your own experience, and if there's anything that you would like us to share based on your own experience.
Absolutely. I think before I proceed with answering that, I'd really like to laud Dr. Nathan for actually being so vocal against what is actually happening in the United States and most of the world. That big pharma, along with its consortiums with all the politicos, is keeping us on a treadmill of constantly needing drugs to sustain ourselves. Or once we get onto the treadmill, it's very difficult to get off. And to speak up, to be vocal about it, I think takes a lot of courage, especially being being a medical doctor from conventional medicine himself, from modern medicine, and manufacturing drugs which are which with a profit motive. For him to be so vocal and speaking up against these practices and the big pharma, I think takes a lot of courage. So really kudos for that. To answer your question, Dr. Kibet, first of all, let's also define what traditional medicine is. Traditional medicine is herbs, it's supplementations, it's the traditional Chinese medicine which you might get, and it's the Ayurvedic herbal supplementation which you might get. But what else is traditional medicine? Traditional medicine is also, it could be movement. Traditional medicine could also be, something like sound healing, which is medicine, sound medicine. Traditional medicine could also be manipulation of the breath. It could be breath work, which comes again very deeply from yoga and Ayurveda, called pranayam. Traditional medicine could also be, practicing mindfulness, which is a movement which has come out of Buddhism as well. So medicine should not be only seen in terms of herbal supplements or drugs or things that you ingest into your mouth. Medicine is also what we receive. What is cosmic nutrition? We get cosmic nutrition through sunlight. It's nutrition. We get nutrition through a good night's sleep. That is a form of nutrition. We get nutrition. We get nutrition through meaningful connections and relationships. That is nutrition. So our traditional methods and traditional medicine didn't only promote ingesting herbs, supplementation, and drugs, but also all these other forms of medicine which are actually so vital. Now, why I think traditional medicine is actually imperative and is, in my 2.5 years of practice, has been very effective in patient outcomes is primarily because it deals with the whole person. pharma and pharmaceutical drugs often has a lot of biological changes in the body, and there's a lot of chemical manipulation, whether it's with respect to providing insulin to your body, or whether it's providing statins to your body. But does it really address the person who we're talking about? You 10 people have elevated cholesterol levels, you'd probably be giving the same statins to all of them. But are they the same person? Is that the root cause of why the cholesterol levels are elevated? Have we even looked into what they're eating, when they're eating, how they're eating? What is their lifestyle like? What are their stress levels like? What are their relationships like? So, this is what traditional medicine really emphasized. It emphasized, we talk about Ayurveda, for example. It comes from my country. And we have a system of diagnosis in Ayurveda. It is called Nadi Pariksha, which is also known as pulse diagnosis. This requires for the practitioner to go into a state of centeredness before he takes the hand of the patient, and literally diagnoses the patient from the pulse, which gives them not only an idea of what is physically happening in their body, what is happening at deeper levels psychologically, what is happening in the subconscious mind, and even gives you insight about, probably some karmic patterns. This is well documented with Tibetan and Ayurvedic medicine. So we need to start looking at the whole person, which is what holism is all about. I do believe healing happens when we look at the whole person, and that is the advantage that a lot of our traditional medicine methods, whether it's from the Red Indians in North America, whether it's from the plains of Africa, whether it's from China, whether it's from the India, we really need to see and learn from what these civilizations and traditional methods of healing have to offer.
Thank you. This makes this conversation relatively complicated because Udit has ended up, giving a better definition of traditional medicine. It's not just about the herbs. It's not just about the various products that we use. He's added some cultural practices, different types of activities that we undertake to support the body in its healing. And while he was talking about this, I asked myself, what would the younger generation be saying? How would they define the Generation Z? I don't know, I think there was a newer generation. How will they be defining traditional medicine in the near future? And chances are that they'll be looking at the practices that were being utilized previously. Those of us who've lived in this era may be practicing medicine a lot differently from those that will be coming in the near future. And so their definitions will be looking at newer ways of managing conditions. Whether technology, for example, is advancing and moving away from what was traditionally being practiced into possibly newer ways of managing ourselves. So you took me back to relook at what the definition of traditional medicine to a younger generation would look like, and I think chances are that they'll be completely different. But having said that, I wanted to ask Dr. Nathan, what he does, especially, with this misunderstanding that traditional medications, for example, or products that we use, either to some have not been validated, they have not been assessed. What are we supposed to do to then create confidence so that, the people we discuss with, the people that we talk to, can believe that there is something in traditional medicines that we use, be they through products that we use or, through the various practices that we undertake? What exactly do we need to do to change this perception, especially to the society?
Well, I think it's necessary. It has to change because in the U.S., at least 70 to 80% of the U.S. population takes some form of dietary supplements. So, that's far more than the majority. And it's the wild, wild west in the U.S. There's thousands of companies out there selling thousands or tens of thousands of dietary supplements, and obviously there's a hierarchy of quality. And the cheapest product is typically not the best product, but most Americans shop on price. There are many forms of magnesium supplements, for example. There are hundreds of so-called nitric oxide products, which is a market that I compete with in the consumer division. But none of these products actually do what they're designed to do or say they're going to do. So there's a disconnect between the deceptive marketing and trade practices of the companies and actually what the products are actually delivering. And I think, again, there needs to be, these companies need to be held accountable. And mainly a lot of funding now toward dietary supplements, saying, okay, which form of magnesium is actually the best? Which forms of B vitamins and things like that are the best? And again, I think it comes back to personalized medicine and epigenetic regulation and nutrient deficiencies and personalized medicine, nutrient analysis, micronutrient analysis, and figure out, because my nutrient requirements are probably going to be much different than anybody in here, and our microbiome is completely different. So how we metabolize these products. So I don't know if I have an answer to the question posed, but clearly there's a problem and there's a disconnect. And again, these are for-profit companies that are out there that really have no regard. Most companies have no regard for their end consumer. Just how do I continue to sell them more product?
Wow. So I'm sure the audience, possibly might chime in if they have any inputs. But before we get to, our colleagues in the room, mine to Udit is you've been coaching. You gave us a testimony that you had some serious medical challenges and you tried modern medicine. You didn't seem to have gotten an outcome. You attempted to use a combination, and I don't know what your experience is. What would be your advice, to either the doctors or the medical fraternity? And how do you think we can work together to possibly, function in a manner that enables all of us to appreciate and understand what we go through?
Thank you for the wonderful question. I think it's a brilliant question, and I think if I had to respond to that in a very succinct and brief manner, I think it's very simply to see the person behind the patient. It's about the human touch. I remember having a conversation with you last afternoon post lunch, and we talked about what traditional modern medicine was like and what the modern medicine is like today with the intervention of technology and virtual consultations and seeing the patient over a laptop screen or a TV screen. You did mention to me that in your hometown and in your country, how a patient feels they've not even seen a doctor if they've not had a physical examination. So my brief answer is human touch, but I would like to ask you also a question, Dr. Kibet. What do you think my response of the human touch, how important do you actually think it is in the healing story, in the healing process of the patient? And I think this was also addressed last evening when the last panel discussion where, I think someone asked, would you trust an AI doctor who might be smarter than the human doctor? And most people in the room actually said, no, we would not trust an AI doctor. We would prefer a doctor who is less smart, but we have trust and confidence into. So my answer, as I have said, is definitely the most important thing is the human touch and seeing the person behind the patient. I would like to now pose this question to you. What have you seen over the years with respect to decreasing patient-doctor, patient-practitioner interaction and more virtualization?
That question is a double-edged sword. On one end, patients want to be seen physically. A lot of our patients in our setup would like to have a touch of the doctor. And I think there are various reasons why traditionally that has been the case, because then you're looking at this individual holistically. You are not just looking at the headache that they may be coming with, When you listen to them, you are looking at their body language. There is so much that you are trying to pick from the client. At the point of examining, you are not just examining one specific area, you are looking at various parts of the body. You know, the aching head could just be an indication of something that is further down in the foot. So the role of that physical interaction, touch, makes a whole difference. Vis-a-vis someone who is extremely endowed, you know, with innovation, they can be able to Google things within the fastest time possible. And I was actually seated with one of my young men in the room, and I asked him, you know, how do you remember things? Do you memorize? And he said, no, I don't memorize. I have my phone here. You know, it does the jigs for me. So even for them, when they are prescribing, I remember when I was doing my fellowship in South Africa, a lot of my colleague doctors were not bothered with specific doses. For me, I could remember them off head. For them, they had to Google and see, you know, what the dosing would look like. Were we practicing the same medicine? I guess the answer was yes. The approaches were a lot different. In my country, if a patient saw you Googling, checking on doses, chances are they are gone, long gone. So, but is that moving away from technology? Of course, there are other technologies and innovations that would add more value. But again, I think just trying to move away from that physical component, I think, is where we all have to reconsider and see in which scenarios should we be physical, when do we go virtual. So as I said again, it's a double-edged sword. But it would have just been nice to know from your end what your thoughts would have been, especially when we are looking at, you know, the various components that we use, you know, to support care. As Dr. Nathan mentioned, you know, we have a lot of supplements moving around. We hardly take time to see what the interactions look like between these supplements and the, you know, the modern medicines that we use. Is there something that we are missing out? Is there something that we are not asking ourselves as regards to the various products that, you know, get into our bodies and possibly either make outcomes impossible to achieve? And if you remember Dr. Fahad saying, if through this interaction with a client, you know, you don't achieve an outcome, are you going to release back the monies that you may have taken? Or will you retain the proceeds? So I think this is a conversation that possibly needs to be stretched a little more. And I wanted to ask this question then to my two colleagues. Is there any role that our various governments possibly should participate in ensuring that possibly we relook at traditional aspects of medicine compared to the conventional methods? Because I know people are now moving into highly refined products, highly refined. And I think I was sharing this with the colleagues yesterday that I used to get products that were relatively broader before, and I could kill very many disease entities with one single, you know, drug. But lately, the products are highly refined. I have to struggle running around. And so care is becoming even more difficult and more complicated. I don't know, Dr. Nathan, what your thoughts are as far as the role of our various governments would be as far as traditional medicine is concerned.
I think, well, several decades ago, the National Institutes of Health started a new institute called the Institute of Integrative and or Alternative Medicine, because again, 80% of the population is taking this, so there needs to be some rigor into that. So this institute within the NIH actually funds research for alternative and integrative type of therapies. But all you have to do is look at the data. I mean, the data clearly show that, at least in America, Americans aren't getting better. We spend billions of dollars a year on cancer, cardiovascular disease for the past 50, 60 years. And yet cardiovascular disease still remains the #1 killer of men and women worldwide. So that approach doesn't work. There's no arguing that if the model was working, people would get better. And I think we've been misinformed and misguiding, because in the 1980s, it was declared that cholesterol is the enemy, right? And so with the invent of cholesterol-lowering medications, the American Heart Association made a prediction in the late 80s saying, if we can get everybody's cholesterol under control, cardiovascular disease would be eradicated. and the need for percutaneous coronary interventions would go away. And if you look at the data, again, going back to the 80s, from a 6-year period from late 80s to early 90s, there were about 1,700 PCIs in the US. And now over the past 40 years, in 1 year, there are now over 6,000 PCIs. And yet the standard of care is to put everybody on a cholesterol-lowering medication, whether they have normal cholesterol or high cholesterol. So it's the wrong model. It doesn't work. It's a huge economic burden on most world economies in treating patients. But the only people it's good for are the people that are stockholders in the big pharma, because it's a great financial model, but it's the worst model for the inpatient. So I think when it collapses, it's not if it collapses, when this model collapses, there has to be a system to fall back upon. And what's that system? It's the system that's been in place for thousands of years.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I know time is really moving, and I would wish that we have also sufficient time for question and answer session. I want to ask Udit, you have tried products, and I'm asking myself, what is it that we are looking for in a traditional product that would make you accept a product? If you came to Africa and I told you, oh, we have this traditional medicine, what would it take you to say, yes, I think I should be able to try this product? Is there anything that you are looking for in particular that would then make you say, go for it? Or would you say, no, let me try this one that has been tested? What is it that you'd be seeing in this traditional product that would attract you, towards that particular product?
Thank you for your question. I think, as Dr. Nathan said, one of the greatest, instillers of trust in any product is standardization and rigorous testing by accredited bodies in the country or worldwide health bodies. Testing and providing standards for the quality of that product. How you have a lot of supplementation, which Americans take, whether it's magnesium, zinc, other forms of supplementation which are required. There are traditional medicines produced in India in Ayurveda, which were the biggest barrier to trust in those medicines is adulteration. And how can that be dealt with? How can that be dealt with? The only way to deal with that is to have accredited bodies, whether of worldwide repute or whether of national repute, to be testing and rigorously providing studies on their safety and efficacy. That is the only way that traditional medicine will be seen at par and with the same amount of trust and faith that you have in your pharma generic drugs. The reason we have so much faith in, as for example, in India, we have a lot of faith in the supplements coming in from the West, not because you have better raw materials, but because your standards of testing and accreditation are way higher than what we have over here. Which is why some people are willing to pay the extra buck to get it flown down and to get it shipped all the way to India. But you got to be very careful. So I think what is absolutely key, and where the government needs to get involved with this, the policymakers, is about getting traditional medicine to the fore, but also creating bodies and transparent, reputable bodies testing and standardizing those traditional medicines. Whether it's ashwagandha from Ayurveda, or whether it is magnesium, from naturopathy, or whether it's a homeopathy drug from Germany, you need good, reputable bodies testing and standardizing them. I think that is absolutely essential, and that will go a long way in bringing I will not say traditional, but integrative medicine into the mainstream.
Wow. Quite a bit. And I guess that leaves us with a lot of work to do. And, we are talking about processes here to make this product generally acceptable. And I don't know whether that, by extension, then gives you an outcome that, from a cost perspective, may not be able to compete with the modern medicine. Speculative statement. I don't know, Dr. Nathan, now that you've been using products, traditional in quotes, what is your experience in terms of let's say, costs in providing this kind of care vis-a-vis use of modern methods? Is there any comparison? Is there any variation? Is it something that we could look into? And if that is the case, what should we do?
Yeah, I think the problem is when, and you mentioned this, when the products begin more refined. When we published our seminal paper in 2009 on the nitric oxide activity of traditional Chinese medicine, we became very famous in China. And I flew to China, and I think I gave 6 lectures over 7 days in 5 different cities. But I went to these pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities, and we took the raw material, like this high brix concentrate of Danshin and all these other traditional medicines. And I brought some back with me to the lab, and I tested, and it was it was very potent. But then they gave me the finished product after they got done refining it and putting it in a pill form. And there was no activity in that finished product. But yet, that finished product, the cost of manufacturing and all that is more expensive than just getting the natural product. And again, you lose the efficacy because there's synergy. When you do extractions, you lose a lot of the synergistic properties on that. But I think to make money on that and get a finished product, because as you guys know, most of these natural products don't have a very good taste profile. And at least in America, Americans want to take a pill, right? They don't want to change their diet. They don't want to exercise. They want to pop a pill. So it's a consumer demands, but you lose the efficacy of this. So I think you just have to get back to what works. And as there's more rigor put into these products and the finished products and understanding at each process in the step, what are we losing that's contributing to the therapeutic value of that product?
Thank you. So before we open this to the, our colleagues, I don't know what your parting shots would be, Mr. Udit.
I think my parting thought would be that medicine is not just what you put into your mouth. I think medicine is anything that heals, that makes you whole again. I something which we're implementing in my work with some of the hospitals in India. And I read outside the people who have come from Serenity Light. They have a faith-driven track towards recovery, right? So we need to open our minds to accept and embrace everything that heals. It could be a faith-backed track towards recovery. It could be, it could be pet therapy. It could be singing bowl therapy. It could be supplements. It could be the traditional herbs. It could be a pharmaceutical drug if and when required. And it could be human presence. So we need to really embrace and open our hearts as practitioners and open our minds to other forms of healing while cherishing our own traditional methods and bring them into the fore in a very integrative way. The more we do that, the more they will be in the mainstream, the more standardization there will be with respect to all of these, the more studies there will be on interactions between herbs and drugs, and I think the more safer and better it will be for the end patient. So I think these are my parting thoughts. Don't just view medicine as what you put into your mouth, but medicine is anything that heals.
Thank you, Mr. Udit. Dr. Nathan?
Yeah, I think my parting thoughts would be to go back to the statement I made when we started, that people get sick for 2 reasons and 2 reasons only: nutrient deficiency and exposure to toxins. And people aren't getting better because drug therapy addresses neither one of those. In fact, it contributes to the toxicity because most drugs are toxic. So I think in this era of personalized medicine, we have to do micronutrient analysis, amino acid analysis, and replete to the human body what's missing. And then like organic acid testing and looking at latent viral infections that become active, or bacterial infections, or detoxify from things that are making the body sick. And again, if you remove the toxins, replete missing nutrients, then the body heals itself. And if you go back several hundred years, that was the basis. Most of these natural products contain vital nutrients, trace minerals, trace nutrients. In the US, since the 1940s, to the early 2000s, there's a 78% decline in basic micronutrients in the food grown in America. So we're a nutrient deficient. 95% of Americans are deficient in iodine. 75% are deficient in magnesium, selenium, chromium, all these basic micronutrients that are required for underlying biochemistry. But yet there's symptoms that manifest as a result of that are being treated by a synthetic compound that treats a response to that deficiency. And biochemically, it makes no sense, but that's the practice of Western medicine. So I think you have to get back and understand the individual patient. Again, that patient in front of you, treat that patient, not the number.
Thank you. And I think I won't take too much time. Mine is just to, mention that I think we are getting into a relatively broad, open conversation that is still requires a lot of thinking. But I think the bottom line is that while we think our patients are on medications, they're on more than one particular product. And I think it would just be nice for us to broaden our minds, open our arms, and broaden the conversation so that then we can see how best we can support our patients regardless of whatever product they are on. We have less than a minute, ladies and gentlemen, to bring this conversation to an end, and I wouldn't mind if we could pick a few questions.
Okay, hopefully this will be quick, given we've got 1 minute. When I first came to this particular discussion, I thought it was going to be more of an issue of epistemology, where you have different definitions of knowledge and what makes for good knowledge and bad knowledge. But the entire panel seemed to support essentially the scientific method or evidence-based practices, which I guess in a sense is actually quite traditional because it's literally thousands of years old. But as I was listening to you talk, it seems it's maybe more an issue of free market versus what's good for us. Is it perhaps, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm actually putting this forward as something to consider, is it perhaps that the free market just isn't that compatible with good societal health?
I think that's certainly the main driver is profitability and not what's best for the end patient or the consumer. But again, I think that has to change because the data are the data and you can't ignore the data. In America, and I think in most westernized, industrialized nations, the general population isn't getting healthier. We're seeing a decline in life expectancy and the quality of life. The health span is certainly declining. In the US, 9 out of 10 Americans are metabolically unfit. That's now a national security issue in the US because most people aren't even fit to serve in the US military. So I think as these growing pressures on the pharmaceutical companies to deliver safe and effective therapies or get back to the root cause and change the way we practice medicine, I think the pressures will force this.
And do you think it is only the pharmaceutical companies? Because I've heard people say it's, they call the term big food. A lot of food producers out there are
no, it's
equally
big
guilty.
food, it's big pharma, it's the payers, it's the insurance company, it's a funnel. And people in that funnel are making an enormous amount of money at the expense of our health.
And so from that, do we think maybe we actually need more regulation to prevent some of these things?
I think there needs to be more oversight. I'm not a big fan of regulations. I'm I guess, capitalist at the end of the day, and I want the freedom to operate my businesses and do what's best for society. I don't need government telling me how to run my business, but I think there has to be oversight and a divorce between politicians and people running big pharma and funding those decisions and legislations in the U.S. And government is a stepping stone to high-paying jobs in pharma. All former FDA officials become multi-million-dollar employees for big pharma, and that's about to stop.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Priyanka. So, as we are discussing here, how we can make the traditional medicine to go with the modern medicine. And we have seen that nowadays for the cosmetic products, for example, the hair oils and the skin products are being promoted as per the body type, right? Okay. So, do you think that there is a requirement for the supplements and also for the other functional medicines to be segregated as per the body type? Few people have very cold body, few people have, like in Ayurveda we call it vata pitta kapha, and we can mention it like a very cold body, hot body, or very dry body. Okay, so if you have any thoughts on this, please share.
My response. My response in one word is absolutely. I think we are in the age of personalized medicine. To mainstream produce products with body types is one step towards it, but I'm all for it. That is one step closer to personalized medicine. I think that is the direction that we should be all going towards. Yes.
Sure. What you will say?
I would agree too. Everybody's different. You got to look at the Constitution. You got to look at, your metabolic requirements are much different than mine. Men, female, your skin tone, type, color is different. Skincare products have to be personalized. Supplements have to be personalized. Drugs have to be personalized.
So what are the ways is it are these being taken in the modern technology where we are distributing the kind of like magnesium and zinc? Uh, are there any criterias that this body type shouldn't take it or this body type definitely should take it?
I think the answer comes in testing. I mean, you have to do personalized testing and figure out what exactly is your body missing. What does it need? Because again, these companies are mass marketing. They want to sell everybody their product, whether they need it or not, or whether it's good for them or not. And I think that's where the personalized medicine and nutrition aspects of it, and treating you versus treating me. There's not a one size fits all in supplements or drugs.
Yes, yes.
And
So,
yeah, also in my experience in functional medicine, when we prescribe supplements, for example, I'll take an example of magnesium. Magnesium is one of the supplements which are very required because of the depletion in the soils over the last 70 years. In USA, also in India, magnesium controls more than 300 enzymatic functions in your body, and is responsible for energy production, for relaxation, all of that. So I think personalized medicine is also being practiced right now in at least the circles that I practice in. To give you an example, if a person has IBSD, more tending towards diarrhea, we would not suggest them magnesium citrate. We would probably tell them to go with another form of magnesium, maybe bisglycinate, or another one. But it is already in variants of supplements being produced. We're already very aware, like as an Ayurvedic doctor, you would keep certain Ayurvedic herbs away from a certain body type. Like if I'm high in pith, you probably will control the amount of pith causing herbs which you prescribe to me. So I think that we're always already moving towards that, and any step towards more personalization is welcome.
yeah, so we have noticed that in the vata conditions, the dry conditions, mostly the IBS is very common, and it's better to give the probiotics. Though the people who have the IBS due to the stress, maybe, and that can be the pitta condition, their probiotic can be harmful. So I think
Absolutely,
that,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
sure. Great.
Yeah, so we have different dietary recommendations for different conditions in functional medicine as well, and I think that's very welcome. That's the way forward.
Thank you.
Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen. I think my question is kind of personal, but I also interested. So we have a team of software developers. We creating applications, mobile web applications, and we intended to do some product in health tech. We already have clients in a health tech sphere, but as an outsource company for delivering development, right? And we wanna find, exactly want to find some maybe issue, some problem in health tech, in order to do some product. And I'm kind of researching now the field, right? And when I discussed with other doctors, other persons from this field, especially in our country, I'm from Kazakhstan. Especially in our country, there are many like so basic problems actually. For example, there is the lack of the gloves in clinics, you know, gloves, you know, and the lack of ordering gloves, and so some basic problems actually. But we wanted to create some innovative product. And how do you think actually should we focus on something like innovative, create some new great thing, or we should just solve these basic problems? How do you think? Does that make sense?
I mean, for a company standpoint, companies do well when you solve a problem.
Yes.
If you're selling a product that doesn't make someone's life better or solve a major problem, you're just a Me Too technology. And successful companies think differently and solve big problems or make life easier, make life better. So I think it depends upon your bandwidth. But if you can solve a major problem in healthcare, then you'll be very successful.
Mine is
if you
just to
want to.
Yeah, so the way we function in our country is that you look for specific problems and try to get specific solutions. As an IT person, I think the question is, how would you utilize IT either to tease out specific issues or get solutions out there? So it's all dependent on what your technology is interested in answering. If the question is to relay information or communicate, then the issue would be, what are the questions, what are the issues, so that then you can inbuild in your software, and you can then be able to use the same software either to get back to the general community, or you are using the software to relay certain questions to the community and get back answers that would then help, be analyzed and help you make certain, policy decisions. So it's all dependent on what you want to answer. But of course, as Dr. Nathan has mentioned, the more specific you are in your software, the better for you, because then you get much more refined, answers. You're not getting responses that you wouldn't be able to know where to place from an analytical perspective. So again, the more specific you are, the better for you in terms of answering some of the questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd go with Dr. Nathan to very briefly just reiterate what he said. I think you've got to look at what the problem is, how you plan to make it better, and what your core competency, your ability to make that better is. So you got to look at the environment where you feel the problem is, and you got to see what it is that your core competency is, which you can actually offer to make that problem better, and then arrive at something as basic as gloves or something as innovative as a technology.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that would be it. Oh, sorry. I hope that is the most burning question or comment.
Hi, Andre Youssef. You mentioned during the discussion about AI that cannot replace doctors and this stuff. In my life, I have a health issue, and I rely a lot on AI. So ChatGPT, any other AI sources. So do you think I should keep going, take advices from AI in daily life, for myself, for my kids, for anything, or we should not rely a lot on AI, knowing AI is taking a big part of daily lives in all business? Thank you.
Well, I would just comment that you have to be careful, and it's probably very dangerous because the information that's out there is highly biased. And media controls the messaging, pharma controls messaging, and they feed AI what they want AI to regurgitate. And again, we've been misinformed and misguided on the treatment of chronic disease. And so I think there's still no better treatment regimen than to find a functional integrative medicine doc who can spend hours with you, not 6-7 minutes, because you can never get a full patient history in 7 minutes and figure out the root cause. AI cannot replace that.
And I think mine is just out of experience. I've actually helped in designing some AI tools that we are using. And as Dr. Nathan mentioned, it's highly targeted information. You are throwing out this question and this is a possible answer because it's guided, it's moving you in a certain direction. And I think that is a challenge. And you can't replace the brain, for example, with a tool that has been designed. The brain can move in whichever direction you want. If you had this, you're likely to engage in this particular direction. Just like I did mention, you can actually, instead of asking questions directly that would give you a positive answer, you could use other approaches to get responses that would help you make certain decisions. So I think it is a combination, and we have to be careful and cautious on how we utilize some of these technologies. Where you think it will apply and help you, well and good. Where we think it may not, then I think the appropriate thing is to do a physical.
I think I agree completely with my other two panelists. I think utilize it, but with discretion.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I'll
you.
leave it at that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, let's give them a round of applause.